The spotlight this week is back on Erin Patterson, the Australian woman convicted of the mushroom murders after her sentencing yesterday. In a first for Victoria, the proceedings were broadcast live from court. There has, of course, been intense public interest in the case, both here and overseas. Podcasts, articles, even book deals that are planning to come out. In this Squiz Shortcut, we're going to take a look at what Patterson's life is like now and just why the story has caught the attention of people all over the world. Squiz Shortcuts is the backstory to the big news stories. I'm Larissa Moore.
And I'm Andrew Williams.
Andrew, our first podcast together.
It's very exciting to have you here, Larissa. Back in the studio. Not a new face by any stretch.
Exactly. Kind of an original Squiz.
Yeah.
I joined the team when it was just Claire and Kate. Long-time listeners will know I used to co-host the Squiz Today podcast, among other things that I do at the Squiz. But I have recently been on parental leave, but I'm back and diving into shortcuts with you.
And you're back for one of the biggest news stories of the year.
I know. I have been very interested in this case, so love that I get to dive into this straight away. And one more thing that is a bit new for us, we are recording this shortcut as a video so people can watch it on YouTube.
Yes, you may be watching us on YouTube right now. Hello, if you are, welcome. So just another way for you to get on board. It'll still be obviously audio on all the platforms that you usually get your podcast, but you can see it on YouTube as well.
You can find it at The Squiz. But let's get into it. Erin Patterson. So thousands of people tuned into the live stream yesterday. It was a first for the Victorian Supreme Court to do a live stream. Justice Christopher Beale delivered his remarks. He sentenced her to life in prison with a non-parole of 33 years.
Yes, and people from all around the world, as you said, were online to hear this in real time. And as you would know, and as we will talk about, this case has had enormous public and media attention, just absolutely gigantic. So this sentencing yesterday was a major media and public event. But at the core of this case, it's always important to remember that 3 people were murdered and another person had an attempt made on their life as well. And we should make clear that it wasn't for some sort of entertainment value that this was broadcast online. It's that Justice Christopher Beale decided that it would be the best way to, in his words, promptly and completely communicate his reasons for the sentence that he ended up handing down.
Because there has been so much public interest in this case, obviously you guys have talked a lot about it on the Squiz Today podcast. A lot of Squizzers will already be familiar with the details. We're not going to rehash it, but we did think it might be useful to take a look at why the case has captured so much attention and really the next thing, what Patterson's life behind bars could look like.
Yeah, what's going to happen next. But just to quickly give you a recap on the past in case you haven't been following this case. So Erin Patterson is a 50-year-old Victorian mother found guilty in July of murdering her estranged husband's parents, Don and Gail Patterson, and Gail's sister Heather by serving them a lunch of individual beef Wellingtons that were laced with death cap mushrooms in July of 2023. So she was sentenced to life in prison for each of those 3 murders. Those sentences will be served at the same time.
As you said, there was another victim. She was also found guilty of the attempted murder of Heather's husband, Ian Wilkinson. He survived the lunch, but he too became very sick after eating it. He spent 7 weeks in hospital and actually needed a liver transplant before he actually recovered. Yeah,
and over the course of the trial, which lasted around 9 weeks, the jury heard that Patterson had invited her in-laws over to her house in the little country town of Leongatha in the Gippsland region, along with her husband, Simon. But Simon actually pulled out the day before, and that's notable. After the trial, it came out that Simon had fallen ill from what he believed to be food poisoning on a couple of occasions after eating food that had been prepared for him by Erin. He'd had part of his bowel removed following one of those instances, but it wasn't proven that Erin poisoned him. And it's important to remember as well that the jury wasn't privy to any of that information in the trial either.
Yeah, of course. And that's just one aspect of this case that really caught people's attention. And we're going to talk about some of the others a little bit later on. But for now, let's take a look at what Erin's day-to-day life is likely going to be in prison.
Yeah, so she's now gone from being a mum, she has a son and daughter with Simon and was living in a comfortable house, which she'd built from the money of 2 inheritances, to life in prison, and a pretty severe life in prison at that. So in her cell, she's allowed supplies for crocheting, as well as a computer, TV, books, a fan and a hair straightener. But in the lead up to her sentencing, she was spending 22 to 24 hours a day in her cell, having no contact with other inmates for her own safety because of how notorious her case was. And that means that she's only been allowed to use a small courtyard that's attached to the back of her cell for open air. That's pretty much it.
And we know all this because a lot of it came out in her pre-sentencing hearing. Her defence team argued that her isolation over a prolonged period was inhumane and that should be taken into account when Justice Beale was considering her sentence.
And when he did consider her sentence, he said that he would give weighty consideration to that. So in terms of where she's being held, it's called Dame Phyllis Frost Centre. It's a maximum security women's correctional centre in Melbourne. It's particularly in the suburb of Ravenhall, and she's been held there under those strict conditions for more than a year now. So the unit, which is where she's being held specifically, has been subject to frequent lockdowns. They've had a lot of staff shortages there. That's been a real ongoing issue. And there's been a cluster of suicide attempts by inmates this year as well.
What we don't know yet is if and where she would be moved to, if that's going to happen when she serves her sentence. But Justice Beale did comment that her notoriety isn't going to diminish, which could put her at risk of being targeted by inmates wherever she is held. So she's still likely to be subject to certain restrictions for her own protection. And this was a factor in his decision to spare her from the harshest sentence, which is life behind bars with no parole.
Yeah, she could have got no parole at all rather than a non-parole period of 33 years. And when he was talking about that during the sentencing, he actually talked about a set of United Nations guidelines, which are known as the Bangkok Rules, which I hadn't heard of before, but had a look into. And they basically say that a prisoner of any stripe should not be in separation for more than 15 days at a time. Patterson has now been in separation continuously for 15 months. That's directly what Justice Beale said. So that's going to be, I guess, now that the trial is over, the story won't end. Her conditions in prison and what that life is like is going to be a continuing point of interest.
Yeah, and as we said at the top, the interest in this case has been enormous. It's set to continue. Up next, we're going to look at why the experts believe the case has captured so much attention. Andrew, it's fair to say this case has gripped the Australian public, and it was that way from the get-go. Got called the mushroom murders. One of the questions that were asked from the very beginning, even before Erin Patterson was charged, was how the poisonous mushrooms got into the family lunch that she served, whether it was deliberate or whether it was just the terrible accident that she eventually tried to claim that it was. In her defence, she tried to convince the jury that that's how it happened. All of these things are just parts of the many layers that have added up to the public interest in this case.
Yeah, it's been significant. And just in terms of how significant, Christian Silva is a court reporter from the ABC who's covered this case extensively. And he said that the legal experts he's talked to, so not even journalists, like legal experts, say that it's the biggest case in terms of public attention since Lindy Chamberlain in 1980, sort of to 1985. And a lot of experts have weighed in with opinions on, well, why is that? Because you do occasionally see the question, why do we care so much about this one murder when there's so much else that's going on in the world? And so why it is so fascinating to people is a really interesting question. A lot of people have looked into it. And one of them is the criminologist Xanthi Mallet. So she reckons that there's a few key reasons. The fact that 3 deaths happened at a family lunch is a big factor. She says family lunches are such a relatable, ordinary event in people's lives. For one to be the setting of a murder plot in country Victoria is something that feels like it's more out of a detective novel than out of real life.
Yeah, for sure. Mallet also says the other intriguing element of the case is the exotic mushrooms used for poisoning by Patterson. She presented from the start as an average mum with no prior criminal record. But then what came out is all the lies that she told. They piled up.
Yeah, they did. So Patterson was caught by the police lying about several things. Crucially, about where she got the mushrooms for the lunch and about whether or not she owned a food dehydrator. She also admitted to the jury that she lied about being sick with cancer to get her in-laws to come over for lunch in the first place because she had some news about her health to tell them. And then she was caught lying about the multiple mobile phones she was using before and after the lunch. So every time a new detail came out in this case, even the fact that, you know, she chose to wear white pants on the same day that she claimed to be experiencing explosive diarrhea, just gave another headline and another reason for people to get, you know, continually invested in this personal story.
And I know my group chats were going off as every new detail emerged. And of course, that was throughout the trial. The interest only intensified. She chose to be tried in Morwell, which is a regional town near her home, not in Melbourne, which is kind of where you would expect a big case like this to happen. It was a tiny courtroom. Not much access, not much space for people, not much space for the media. The town was slammed.
Yeah, slammed, because news organisations from all around the world, so we're not just talking, even if you'd sent just journalists from Australia, it probably would have been slammed, but there were news organisations from everywhere sending journalists and camera crews, podcasters, true crime experts to cover the trial. So every morning a queue would form outside the court to get in. And it wasn't just the media either. So there were people from all walks of life turning up for the day. Some of them missed work to go and attend the trial, and they wanted to get a first-hand view of the proceedings. So this is intense public interest beyond what you would normally see.
You mentioned international media. The case made headlines in the UK, the US, Canada, New Zealand, Singapore, Middle East, even Germany. Mm-hmm. In Britain, the tabloids like the Daily Mail and The Sun were running daily updates nearly. In the US, networks like CNN and the New York Times covered it. Across Asia, it made primetime bulletins. All this scrutiny, all this interest, there are podcasts dedicated to it, nearly daily podcasts and endless amounts of articles, and there's even 2 books penciled in the works from 2 Aussie journalists.
Yeah, books, film and TV production companies are having a go at it as well. They're working on projects about what they call a real-life gothic culinary thriller, which is exactly what you would imagine a film and TV production company would describe it as. There was one article in The Guardian that said that publishing houses, streaming platforms, film studios and podcast producers are circling the story like salivating wolves closing in to make a killing. Some of those include a TV drama by the ABC that's called Toxic and a Stan documentary titled Death Cap. And it's probably also worth mentioning while we talk about this intense media interest that Erin's estranged husband, Simon, has said that it has been a significant burden to cope with. He's been followed around and it has been a real problem for him to deal with and his family amongst all the many, many other concerns that they have at the moment.
Because at the heart of this case is the loss of 3 lives, Don, Gail and Heather. They were much loved by their families and their families are grieving.
Yeah, absolutely. And Heather's husband, Ian, gave a quite poignant reminder of this in his recent victim impact statement. So he paid tribute to his wife for 44 years. He described her as beautiful, compassionate, witty and dedicated to helping others. And he said it was a truly horrible thought to live with that somebody could decide to take her life. But at the same time, he offered Patterson his forgiveness. He said that my prayer for her is that she will use her time in jail wisely to become a better person.
As for Patterson, she has continued to maintain her innocence. She hasn't formally lodged an appeal as of yet. Her team have 28 days to do that. Now that the sentencing has been done, they have 28 days to file that initial paperwork. Mm-hmm. So we will stand by to see if something happens out of that.
And it could be an appeal against either the verdict or the sentencing as well. Yep. So that's something to watch too.
Something to watch out for. But that is our shortcut to the aftermath of the mushroom murders. Now on to our recommendations. Each week, we like to give Squizzers recommendations for further reading, watching or listening on the topic. Mine is the ABC's podcast Mushroom Case Daily. One of those ones I was just tuning into to keep up to speed with it all. Followed all the twists and turns from the case from the beginning. Yeah,
somewhat remarkably, this is our first shortcut about Erin Patterson on any level. Mushroom Case Daily, I think, have done episodes probably over 100 by this point on the case. And if you want a really comprehensive approach, then that is definitely the one to go with. And in terms of where we go from here and sort of, if you thought that the story was done after the trial was done, it certainly is not. I've got an article published in The Guardian that covers the various film, book and podcast projects inspired by the case.
Stand by, the content is coming. I will put links to both of those in the episode notes. Thank you for listening or watching. Please remember to share the episode with your mates if you did enjoy it. If you have an idea for a future shortcut you want us to get you across, we always love to have suggestions in our inbox. You can flick them through to hello@thesquiz.com.au. Until next time.